But for those of you in the gallery, my name is Paul Porter. I'm the new chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And to kind of bring up the tail end of this ad hoc committee, Richard has passed the baton to me to try and sew things up. And I do want to just commend him and thank him for the long hours of coordinating and showing up and getting us to this point. But hopefully we can all come to an agreement of bringing some closure. That would be my goal. So there she is. Welcome, welcome. Didn't miss a thing except me explaining why I was talking instead of Richard. So I did, let's see, if I recall from the last time, we had just come off the heels of the forum and we weren't really sure what that looked like. And I do have some, Dave Fisher took all of the stuff that had been submitted to the county. I just want to give you those results, and he eliminated duplicates and just sifted through all that. And just by way of bringing things full circle, I wanted to let you know what those numbers look like. There were 212 people that attended. There were 256 that gave written testimony. There were 44 that both attended and gave written testimony. So there were a total of 424 people that responded. And as far as the people that were at the forum, of those 212, 11 were proponents, 26 were neutral, and 175 were opponents. And of the written testimonies, 8 were proponents, 2 were neutral, and 246 were opponents. And I think that's it. I just mostly wanted to bring that full circle. Does anybody have any questions or anything about that information? The main thing that Dave did was find those that both wrote in and showed up and make sure we have reasonable numbers in the end. So
that equates to about 0.4% of county residents that spoke against it, and less than 1% that spoke in favor of it. Then you want to quantify that?
Just a quick shout out to David for doing that. Thank you, David. I appreciate it.
say that again, 4/10.
0.43% of county residents would have spoke out against it. Less than one, well, be about less than 1,000 to 1% were for it.
And what are you using for your grand total?
Well, 97.47. That's not accurate. That's from 2021. It's the most recent that I could find.
Of course, that's every breathing body.
Sure.
But thank you. I appreciate that.
To safely get them.
So just want to bring that full circle. And as far as tonight's agenda, this is what I'm hoping for. We really, I believe, and I'm assuming the other planning and zoning members are in agreement, that it's reached the point where we're very close to being able to turn our, we're calling it the red line document, for lack of a better word, over to planning and zoning for further review and official review. And I'd like to see that happen by our April meeting, which is the second Tuesday in April, if at all possible, which some of that will depend on what transpires tonight. So that's my own high-level goal, and if you all are not in agreement with anything I say, then throw something at me, erasers or pens or whatever. So the main point of the ad hoc committee was to give the proponents and the opponents an opportunity to offer suggestions to the existing regulations. And we're hoping that you did have that. In our last meeting, if my memory serves, we blasted through beginning to end, I believe, and we're asking for any further input. And I know since then, Mark has sent us some things. You sent us the wildlife article.
Also includes some
Setback.
information about what setbacks would do to the percentage of property and how that may affect the landowner in terms of net income.
I think I disagree with that, because I think if it's gonna be in the actual, you want me to put,
No, I don't want you to be quiet. Let me finish my expectations for tonight, and then
Yep.
that may,
how about it?
we'll get there. So, one of the main ideas was to give both of you opportunities to be heard and give your suggestions for changes to our existing regulations. And we were not tasked to make any decisions, nor can we legally outside of the bounds of the regular Planning and Zoning Commission. So that's why for actual decisions to be made and voted on, these net results need to be put in the hands of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So what I would like to do tonight is, one last gut check, and assuming time is permitting, to make sure that each of you feel like you've had your opportunity to submit changes. Now, the reason I interrupted you, Mark, is I don't want to really discuss the merits of one person's input over another. I'd rather just take them in like we have with the red line document, and then the Planning and Zoning Commission will have, hypothetically unlimited time to wrestle those to the ground. I think we've had enough, not as in we don't need more, but we've had sufficient discussion that we have sufficient information to let us sew things up and have those conversations in our official meeting. So that's why I interrupted you.
Yep.
The discussion's great, but I'm hoping just to rein things in.
Yep.
And it's not a comment on the merit of anybody's idea. I'm almost done with my speech, believe me. So I think I remembered. Am I remembering correctly? We made it through. We made it through front to back. So what I would like to do is really just hit one last time. Oh, one other thing. When you're 50, I'll be 58 next month. I slept about 3 hours last night. And the coffee is gone. And if I have more, I won't sleep tonight. It's a terrible catch-22. So anyway, but here I am, adrenaline at the ready. But this first part's going to be a little herky-jerky until I give you guys the microphone, and then we'll be fine. Just some ground rules. Planning and zoning folks, like I said, I believe we have ample opportunity during open discussion during our regular meetings. So I would like to limit our input to this conversation to clarifying questions on anything that these folks say and not bring up something new. But if something is just burning in your craw, don't hesitate. I mean, it's just a matter of coordinating discussion. But we have an opportunity later. So in an effort to let them empty their bucket tonight, I'd like to limit our input to clarifying questions rather than new discussion. Okay, I think that's it. And one other note for the planning and zoning folks, David Fisher has decided to come out of retirement and become an Excel spreadsheet expert, and as a tool for us in our further discussions, he has taken the red line document, including all the updates from today, and put them basically in columns and basically resorted the red line document that we have and put it in an Excel spreadsheet. So my hope in April is that between the red line, that spreadsheet, which is on SharePoint now, we can go bam, 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 bam. This is what the ad hoc said. This is what the ad hoc agreed on. This was the consensus. This was not the consensus. It's a work in progress, but it's about 80% there from what I could tell this afternoon. So keep that in the back of your mind. Look at it if you haven't looked at it. Darren put it on SharePoint this afternoon. And also it will change possibly based on our conversation tonight. But as of about 4 o'clock today, it was up to date.
What folder is that in on SharePoint?
I think it's in the solar one.
And it's gnarly. But I think it'll help us to be driven by bullet points versus, versus any other method. Just kind of give us an agenda in the future. All right. So now, any questions, comments, input? Paul, you talk too much, stuff like that. All right.
It's highlighted red. Name, solar draft.
So what I'm going to do is almost hope a brief version of what we did in our last meeting. Pick a section. Anything on your mind that's been overlooked, make note and move on to the next one. And with that, if there's no objections, we'll start at the very beginning. I know we didn't change anything, but 101. Anything from?
Nope.
You all right? I should have said 14.1. Anything in 14.1? From either of you? Definitions, 14.2. Any changes to the domestic section, 14.3? And when I say changes, I mean changes beyond the changes to the changes we already made changes to. 14.4, and yes, you have to diagram that sentence at the end of the day. Four, we had quite a few at the end in the current red line document.
Did we change the cap to 2,000? It's listed in here as 2,000.
This marks red line.
Oh, I'm looking, the copy I'm looking at is Darren's.
Where is that?
This is the one-
It's at
That
4,000.
was it.
Currently at 4,000 in Darren's markup. You're talking about section 14.406.
Yeah, the red line we received by email today shows it being reduced to 2,000. Our last discussion was 4,000.
That's because that was the
Yes.
one that Mark.
That was my red line I stood in.
That email is Mark's markup.
Do we have a red line from this committee?
I think the newest one's from March 7th.
Yeah, you should have received an email from Darren. It hasn't been changed since March 7th.
Since we had a lot of items that we were we just got together and put all of our circle back issues in there.
Right.
This is what we would like to see, just so,
That's included.
yes.
Yes, thank you. That's
So
all
I
I'm
just figured
hoping.
it'd be easy. You guys could have that. You guys could put notes what they wanted.
Yes,
There you go.
that was our hope. So,
Yeah.
yes, thank you.
So when we're talking about the total amount, I'm gonna just throw back out there 8,000. I mean, I'm sure not 2,000.
Okay.
Can I do that? Or Mike?
Well, we can do that.
Okay.
We can definitely do
Oh,
that.
I thought, okay. Am I
But
not supposed to do that now?
no, it's fine.
Okay.
There's no rules. It's
Yes,
just,
there are.
well, his suggestion is 2. The last suggestion we discussed in our meeting was 4. the meeting in Darren's document is 4, so my understanding is what you thought was in there is in there. Is,
It's 4.
do you agree?
I don't have the red line from the 7th. I don't have an email from it.
I'm sending it to you right now.
Okay, cool.
All right, sorry.
You like that?
Paul, can I ask a just clarifying question?
Sure.
As we're going through the sections and you're asking if there's any additional comments, would this be in addition to the red lines that Mark had already sent us? Or are you wanting Mark, to, like, for example, like 414.2, Mark added 2 more definitions in there in his red line?
Right.
And I'm making sure you weren't expecting to talk about them now, since we already had his red line.
If he knows he sent them to me,
We're good.
we have.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure we're all
I
set.
just figured it'd save a lot of time. I mean, not
Yes,
repeating.
today they're in Dave's spreadsheet. We can absorb
Okay.
those into Darren's red line, and we will have a composite red line.
Fantastic.
But since they came in the last few days, they're not absorbed into Darren's red line yet.
Yep. Okay.
So, yes, we can talk about that. We can do it now or in our meeting.
Let's do it at the meeting.
In regards to the 8,000, I mean, I have a proponent seat, but I felt it was, I'm the one that offered the suggestion to reduce to 4,000 with the caveat that it be reviewed after 3 years, because the likelihood that a project could be off the ground and there be some data to support whether this was a good endeavor or a bad endeavor would be able to empower the county commissioners to decide if they wanted to expand it even further.
Right.
So my concern with a 2,000 limit would be if we make it too restrictive, that it may be possible to steer away any potential development.
I agree. I think that's a prudent way to go.
Okay. Any other comments on the cap or section 14.4 in general?
Are setbacks part of 14.4?
No, we'll get there.
Okay, thank you.
I figured that's gonna be our Achilles heel. I think it's 7, isn't it? Setbacks are 7. So anything else in 14.4? If not, moving to 14.5, the site plan. The only change I have in Darren's version is 501I, changing 500 to 1,000 feet.
Could I ask one more question about 14.4 and be specific about the power purchase agreement? Mark, is your suggestion, it's just to verify that there's indeed a use for the energy once it's created?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, that makes sense. Thank you.
Anything else in 14.5? 14.6, construction management plan. The only change I have from Darren's document is 601E regarding the fencing. And that would probably require further discussion, planning and zoning, type and size and fencing.
For a little clarification on the fencing of the gap. Technically, we put that in there for wanting to know like what the site's fencing would be like, and then I added a section where it actually describes what a fence would be like. Don't know what's really needed there, but that'll be up to you guys.
Okay. But what you're saying is you're more concerned of the final fencing,
Yes, not temporary.
correct? And 7, our favorite. Buffer plan. I have in the current version, strikeout of A1C of minimum 2,500 feet is stricken. And I have 3B, 500 feet changed to 1,000 with the addition of the greater of the distance from the dwelling or the property line.
I thought we were deleting C from section
All of them?
701A, 1C, 2C, and 3C. And on this red line, I only see it on 1C.
That would be what I remember too. Are we in agreement that C was stricken from all three of those? The minimum of 2,500 feet setbacks was removed.
The idea was to create the opportunity to group them together rather than to create space and spread them apart.
I don't, we need a dinner music orchestra in the background.
We're all just focused on your voice.
Well, I could
Good.
sing.
We could put Jaws on.
Jaws.
Us.
Boy, you're just full of omens tonight, aren't you? I like optimism. It's all gonna work out. It'll all come together. Anyway, plus we just need to smile every few minutes and be glad it's a beautiful day. So we struck all three Cs. Are we really gonna cruise through 14.7 that quickly?
So I'd like to offer some information about buffer plans, and you had mentioned something about a residence growing to 1,000 feet from residence.
I'm talking about the comment on 3B, a minimum of 1,000 foot setback from any SECS permitted area to a residential dwelling or 500 feet from property line, whichever one is greater.
Okay. You thought that number had changed to 1,000?
Yes. I have in Darren's document that 500 is struck, changed to 1,000 with the additional phrase of the greater of the two.
This is my notes are going too, Paul, for verification.
I remember we talked about property lines rather than residence itself. I shared some information with the group specifically about setbacks. The original approved regulation of Board of County Commissioners for site boundaries was 200 feet. Again, sitting as a proponent, I offered a greater one of 500 feet. I know 1,000 has been floated out as well. I think it's really important to see what that does to different site parcels.
Yes.
So you have to consider this as not attached to any proposal that is in existence now. You have to judge it on the merits of any piece of property in the county that may potentially be developed should the landowner find someone that's willing to develop it. So if you look at a 640 acre parcel, which is near the top of the document that I shared with you, I'll just highlight it. If you have a 640, you're likely to have a roadway surrounded on all four sides. That's how our county is typically laid out. If you were to take a 200-foot ring on all four sides around that and say what is left inside of that 200 feet ring, which is the setback requirement, you'd have 546 acres left to develop by 46.7. So overwhelming majority of that property could be developed. Set aside the fact that only 50% of it could be prime farmland because we don't know that any or all parcels are going to be classified as prime farmland. Got to be open-minded. All different types of property could be developed. If we increase that to 500, which again was the suggestion that I made to the group, we reduce that from 546 acres down to 420. Pretty significant drop off. If we increase that to 1,000 feet, which is not quite a quarter of a mile, but 1,000 feet ring around the property, you're down to 246, which is only 38.6% of that property would be eligible to be developed. Can a neighbor that adjoins you agree to a shorter setback? That's a separate conversation. The regulations would say this is your right unless somebody else is willing to do something different. So that's a 640. So we're going to go from The original regulations, 85% of it could be developed to, if it's 1,000-foot setback, only 38%, significant change. If you had a half section, which is typically a mile by a half mile, you're going to go again from 250 acres, which is roughly 78%, 78.4, to a 500-foot ring around the property would drop it to 161 acres, so roughly half. If you put a 1,000-foot setback, you're down to 15% of the property could be utilized, just 15%. If you had a quarter section of ground, 115 acres could be done at the already adopted 200-foot. So 71.99% of it could be developed. If it was at 500, it drops to 61.7 acres. If you put a 1,000-foot setback, you can only develop 9.4 acres in the very center of it. If you have an 80, you could have originally developed a little more than half, 47 acres. Again, the 500 feet I suggested drops it to just 12, and you cannot develop anything of 80 acres at 1,000 feet. It's an impossibility. And then a 40, which is the minimum size, could only develop 19 with the already adopted. It drops to 2 acres, and then it's not usable as well. I put some earnings numbers off to the side, but I want to point something out. If you review those, they could be somewhat misleading because if you look at the rental agreement, if it's already being farmed or cash rented, you need to figure into the consideration the net farm income from operations that's already being received for the landowner off of that. And you would have to compare and contrast that to the guaranteed rates that would be included in a rental agreement that you would have or a lease agreement. So that is an important consideration there. We know that net farm income from operations varies wildly from one year to the next, as well as from grassland compared to prime farmland that's in row crop production in the year that commodity prices are high.
Which section had the prime farmland requirement?
The only thing I'd say to that is if the lease is structured where if they're total permanent acres, they're having to lease, you wouldn't be changing the income to the farmer at all.
Say that again.
So if their lease is structured or anything that they have, so if they're having to lease it for a conditional use permit, that you could not be changing their income at all with the setback.
Because it's the whole lease property.
But you are eliminating an opportunity for them because you make it unfinancially tenable to actually do a solar field on.
So this is a map of all of the signed leases. And once everything is up and going, you take an average, you take all of the acreage. We know where Clearways project is. We know where EDF's project is. And you take the total of all of that. And we've seen some of the contracts that have been signed with EDF and the landowners. We'll take an average of $900 an acre. And these landowners are going to get paid $6 million a year. And the setback is not an issue because that's still part of the leased land.
But this is not specific to that project. This is specific to all of the conditional use permits that anybody might.
I understand that, but I'm going on what's filed with the county right now.
Let's not, dive into details so much as far as, the math is what it is as far as, just the geometry of reducing the radius of the
I'll make
available.
one point to that though, which I appreciate you putting it together. I looked at it before I came. But so your 1,000-foot setback though, that is assuming there's a house on all four sides of that. And you're setting back 1,000 foot on every single side.
No, separate from that, we talked about wanting a 1,000-foot setback all the way around.
Morgan
That
said
was a
that.
separate conversation.
Okay, well that's, agreed.
I'm trying to avoid that.
Yeah, so, but if you had a section of land, there's a residential dwelling here, you're 1,000-foot setback from it. And you may not even be 1,000 foot onto that property line because that house may be 500 foot over on their
It'd be a
property line.
handshake radius.
And then the other sides, under the way it's currently redlined, if there's no houses around there, it'd just be 500 foot. So I appreciate what you put together for sure. I just it's a little, it can be misleading depending on what dwelling put around there and where.
So ultimately, your committee is going to be tasked with determining what the appropriate setback is from a residence as well as from all property lines. And I wanted you to have information so you knew what kind of effect
I
that.
understand.
Right, participating, non-participating, all that, yes. 14409
Row 9.
is the prime ag plan. Very good. Hopefully just listening to them, but I mean, if you have questions or
No, I
comments,
never-
this is,
I never-
So what was the rationale for the 14409 as far as figuring in whether it's prime farmland as to whether the landowner could do with it what he wanted to? Were we going to have zoning that forces them to farm that?
no, and you all correct me if I'm wrong, but discussion, if I recall, was placing a premium on arable land. And as, you know, the general marching orders of planning and zoning is land use. And when the USDA designates land as prime ag land, then its purpose is food production. And it's taxed based on that number. It's all kinds of things based on that number. You know, that 4-digit thing that they get assigned. And so in an effort to honor that, we felt it best to not completely cover land that was designated as prime ag land, so that we recognize the priority of actual food production for us. So that's my memory of the discussion that was probably a year ago.
Well, it should be fair to say that that requirement would be more likely to encourage somebody to develop a poor quality parcel of ground in that regard as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you have rocks like mine, you know, I can grow hay and I can grow hay.
I get from a conceptual point of view where, yeah, it'd be nice if we used ground that wasn't being used for anything else. But if I had a piece of land and I am not a farmer or didn't want to be a farmer anymore, maybe I'm retiring, but still needed money to get through my retirement years, then saying, well, because you have good land, you can't use it for whatever purpose you want to. Just doesn't seem like that follows in the same spirit of landowner rights.
Sure, and so let me just throw it back at you. If you want to propose a different number or no number, this is it. Let's put it to, if you want to put it to 0, I'm taking notes. So, and I apologize, I'm shuffling around so I can take notes.
I don't have any proposals. That was just one of the things that I was thinking about.
Sure. Well, no, I mean, that's why we're here. So think out loud.
I don't have a proposal.
Well, let's just make a note that, how can we generalize it? Reconsider restrictions on prime land to prioritize landowner rights. How about that? And that, at least that way it'll come back up for discussion when we constantly discuss.
Yep.
Is that
That's fine.
okay?
Well, I just say it's a question of good stewardship of the land and also landowner rights. I mean, those are the two issues.
When you're discussing it, just remember landowner rights of the surrounding landowners also.
Right. But I mean, that's the question. Every planning and zoning meeting is that question.
Sure is.
It's, I mean, it's like, that's our mantra. Okay, so we're still, as far as I know, on setbacks?
Brought some information regarding wildlife, because I want to discuss the 5-mile setback that's, was at least discussed. I don't know if that in the current adopted regulations, there's no provision for that. Am I right in stating? So, in my estimation, if someone wanted to make the argument, I just don't want them near a wildlife refuge because I want to stay with the vision of the county and protecting the beauty of the area. I may disagree with that, but I can respect if that's your wishes. I truly can. If you want to use the argument that there will not be habitat left for the water area to feed, I've brought some articles that would refute that completely. So the information.
We received those email, right?
Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure that they weren't physical and they were, okay, go ahead.
So a quick summary is that a mallard duck on average from the scientific journals, many of them sponsored by university, some by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. You'd have to read. I don't want to quote exactly all the sources, but for that, it's 10 to 12 miles. I was under the impression by some of the comments that the concern would be if we develop 1,000 acres within a 5-mile radius, it would have a detrimental impact on the feeding habits of wildlife that frequent that. Could cause them to go elsewhere, could drive away hunters, etc. The other thing that needs to be a very important consideration is the use of crop rotation. Any acreage that's dedicated to soybean production is essentially worthless to waterfowl outside of a few days or a few weeks, depending upon weather patterns. As soon as it rains, soybeans turn to mush. There's no feed left available. Those articles do a good job of documenting that. Knowing that soybeans are the primary crop raised in this county and that they're rotated with milo, more commonly with corn, pretty good chance that it's 50%, I'll say, on any given year. It could be 75% one year, 25% another, because it's rotating. Could be beans on beans or corn on corn, depending upon the producer's wishes. But that needs to be a consideration as well. And so if you look at the number of acres that would truly be lost as a percentage of those within even a 10-mile radius, which is using the low end estimate for mallard ducks, for example, you're talking about even at 8,000 acres, less than 4% of the potential feed sources being eliminated. That's also considering that soybeans aren't factored into that in any way, shape, or form. So I, again, have no concerns giving credence to the fact I just don't want them near there because it's going to affect the landscape. I do have a concern if we want to use feed sources and migration patterns being adversely affected because of that.
And, well, given that, what would your preferred?
Stick with the current regulations.
Okay, I just want to make sure we knew.
So nothing for the wildlife.
I'd like to stick with the current regulations.
Well, the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, they have a document that recommends a 5-mile radius. The Audubon Society came and spoke and asked for a 4.3-mile radius, and she likes solar. So those are not from us, that's from the experts.
I brought sources to back my point of view as well as you, so they'll have that to consider.
I've got the documentation.
Good. Well, thank you. I think we have that. And any other comments or questions on 4.7, the buffer plan?
I don't have an opinion about how solar energy could affect airports because I'm not educated on it. I work in the school system. I don't know how a solar farm being located within 2 miles of the building where I'm employed would be harmful to our students or staff.
Future development.
What'd you say, Mark?
Future development.
Thank you.
Because I mean, it's potentially a 30 to 50-year project, so you do have to think of future development.
So if the school wants to grow.
Yes.
All right.
Like if it was a house next door trying to buy someone else, so a house out to then develop the land for the school is a little bit different than buying a project like this out. That's why.
Right. So we move on to 14.8, roads and road maintenance agreements. I have no changes. If there's no other input, 14.9, maintenance plan.
On disturbance of the soil, I did a little bit of reading. Personally, I didn't understand it enough. I know a lot of regulation talks about a maximum percentage of grade excavation. And then I didn't really understand enough to put it in there, but I think it's something that should be thought of.
Can you give us an expert opinion on what that refers
So do you
to?
guys understand what that means?
That's why I'm looking at you.
So, okay. I was wondering, I was gonna get pointed out on this one. So a percentage of grade excavation is basically if you took 640 acres, section of ground, you would want to put a cap on what percentage of the surface soil that you're going to allow them to take. So say there's 100-foot elevation difference, right? Are you gonna allow them to go in and cut 50 foot off one side and bury 50 foot on the other side
To create a level.
to create a level pad?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So
So what,
typically on these kinds of projects that I've seen, they're gonna go in and they're gonna flat this thing out like pancake. It makes infrastructure easier, makes it more uniform to put in piers for the channels, roads, all that infrastructure. They're not gonna go on a piece of virgin ground and fight the terrain, because then you have erosion, water runoff, all that kind of stuff. So it's basically like the big commercial warehouses up in Olathe. They go into a piece of property, they strip the topsoil off, and then they do their cuts and their fills, whether that's rock, clay, whatever that is, give them a level building pad. So that's basically what Mark is presented with, a maximum percentage of grade excavation. What is that number?
Could be possible in a large scale project, have a flat elevation for one portion of it and a change in elevation, flat in a separate area.
Things would have to be taken into consideration as far as water management or stormwater runoff. Yes, yeah. And so there comes to be, that's going to affect setbacks. You know, that's going to take place and all that, because it's no different than, say, you're going to tear down a home up in the city and you're going to rebuild a house, right? So you're going to have to do a drainage study, because obviously you're going to go to a larger footprint of the home. You're going to have more forced water runoff. So you have to have controlled green space where you can manage and contain that stormwater runoff. It'd be the same principle applied into this. So I think that would have to be something that would be, and forgive me if I speak out of turn, but site specific.
sure.
That's a good explanation.
But I mean, you're solving the same problem by terracing the field too, though, right? I mean, just to,
Well, but think about this. So if you have, we're just gonna stay with 640 acres, full section. So if you have 640 acres of this, and you have roughly 78%, 80% of it of usable.
That could be used.
Potentially, worst case scenario.
Yep.
You have to factor in
85.4.
85.4%. You have to factor in how much glass surface that the rainwater is going to hit.
sure,
Does that make sense?
Sure.
Because with a farm field, the whole thing is permeable soil. It will absorb all the water. Now you put 80% of a 640 acre section of ground, and now you have glass solar panels. Now you have gravel roads, which are not going to absorb the rainwater like a terraced farm field would, a hay field, cattle pasture, whatnot. So that changes the dynamics of it tremendously from that aspect of it. Now you potentially have a larger, heavier forced water runoff that could potentially cause more erosion problems down the road. That could be washing out underneath the wildlife fences, or the security fences could be washing out gravel road sediments, you know, into creeks, low-lying areas, could be running off into the neighbor's pasture, whatever. Worst case scenario type stuff. But hopefully this kind of gives you.
yep, very good, thank you. Appreciate we have a resident expert. Now, have you included that concern in correspondence with this?
Yeah, it's in there. I just didn't put a percentage number because I didn't really,
Okay,
like I said, I didn't understand it quite enough to, I know some places had like 5%, some places had 7% and stuff like that. So I didn't understand the actual number part enough to put the actual number.
yeah, as long as we have an earmark, so
Right.
that we can return to the conversation, that's my main concern,
It's in there.
so. So 14.9, any other comments? 14.10, decommissioning. I don't have any red ink.
In which one?
14.10. I'm looking at Darren's.
Oh.
When I say I don't have any red ink.
So once we got past 14, once we got past the buffer zones is when we never came to any consensus. So the rest of this has no rain.
Okay. So any concerns from Jeff or Dustin?
One of the things that was included in the red line document we got from Mark, I like the idea of conserving the topsoil and having a plan for what that looks like. It's not a given that any piece of parcel is guaranteed to have 6 inches of topsoil currently, or prime farmland to have 12 inches. Are there places in our county that have that? Absolutely. But true topsoil, that would be the exception rather than the rule. So I just want the ad hoc committee to know that.
Anything else? 14.10, decommissioning.
I like all the specifics that you're suggesting. It removes a lot of what if questions on what it's supposed to look like after cessation of the CUP.
And we move to 14.11, final development plan.
One of the things I emailed Darren last week, with the new filing of some of the leases at the Registered of Deeds, EDF's project, their verbiage has changed on what they have filed, and they wanted to put battery storage. And I emailed him asking if we can put something in there, and he said, yeah, we don't want it. So we included the battery storage as a no-go in our red line stuff. I just wanted to make note of that.
Yeah, I thought we discussed that and we
We've
talked
discussed
about prohibiting battery storage, if my memory serves.
Is the main concern there just fire?
I believe so. Fire and,
pollution.
yeah, the leaks into the soil.
Yeah, just maintenance and care.
And I know Clearway said they don't even use batteries, but it probably just depends. I would be surprised if batteries were necessary on a big commercial that's going straight to the grid, but I write software, not electronics. But yes, battery storage was discussed, so we should have that in our document. 14.11, final development plan. Any other comments?
I like Mark's suggestion to strike if solar panels use toxic materials out, the cost and the time necessary to complete soil and water sampling after or as part of this process would be negligible at best. Let's give everybody peace of mind. I think it's a good compromise.
I agree with Jeff.
$14.12, finance agreement and assurances.
Again, I like the suggestion of the requirement that any pilot agreement that's reached would name Linn County as the payee. If that needs cleaned up and it needs to be more specific as which component of Linn County or subsidiary funds that could be associated with that, I have no issue with that whatsoever. I mean, I think it goes without saying that would be done, but there's no reason you can't codify it if that's going to be done anyways. Give someone peace of mind when you do it.
And I know that we talked about the 125 and the 90 in the, I don't know, one of the previous meetings. So both of those are
Typical someone could correct me if I'm wrong, but a typical soft cost multiplier for most major construction projects is 20% minimum. And so exceeding that, it's smart. Those are for the unknown things that can happen.
Um, So we're talking about 125%,
Correct.
which is not in this document at this point.
To Mark's.
And the bond, or the notification of termination of the bond from 30 days to 90 days.
90 days.
Yes.
We'll talk about that.
Works.
Okay. Anything else on 1412? Not 1413, transfer of conditional use permit.
Is it customary in your regards in the county to allow transfer of a CUP from one landowner or one business to another?
The general rule of thumb in our discussions is the CUP goes with the land. So it would be inherited by a new owner. Okay. You guys follow me.
Yep.
Personally, I don't see a reason to start splitting it out for this type of project or this type of CUP. If the typical, if the status quo is it goes with the property, I would like to see it stay the same. The county's been doing it already.
Charlie, I think it goes way back, right? I mean, that's the way,
One reason we
Stays with
did
the
it,
land.
one reason we did do the suggestion was because, you know, they have to do the water and soil testing and everything else. So then you wouldn't have, well, that was according to theirs, so they do their own set basically. So that way you're kind of starting from square again on the surety bonds, the soil, water sampling and everything else. So just kind of the reasoning.
Okay. It's good context.
Yeah.
So,
If you're confused over their ball, after another, I had everything striped. No conditional use permit shall be transferred from one party to another. That was all I had.
oh, that's right. We did talk about that.
We did talk about that.
Yeah, I've just
I don't know what our consensus technically was,
Not
but we did
trans-
talk about it.
not transferred. Yeah, I remember. Anything else that we didn't hit in this sweep?
So Paul in 14.8, I did the same thing when you went over it, but I don't do it. Section C, I think. Yeah, C. The language, road, bridges, public roads, whatever, to the condition they were in prior to construction at the expense of the applicant. There's a current litigation, I think it's in Colorado right now, involving solar, and it was this similar language that to the condition prior to. From what I read in the article, they completely destroyed the road. The county said the only way to restore this is for you to build us a brand new road. They said absolutely not. We'll put it back in the condition it was. How do you do that to a road that's completely destroyed? And I don't know. It may just be a language deal there, but just after reading that article,
Right.
that spurred me thinking after reading this that basically our language says the same thing. The road's completely demolished. How do you put it back to what it was? The only way you can do that is by building a brand new road, and they're suing, saying we're not doing that. So there's a fight about it right now. I don't know what the answer is there. I'm just bringing it to everyone's attention.
Would the provision about having someone hired by the county to oversee the entire project, could the roadways be included as part of that oversight?
I think at a bare minimum, there needs to be documentation of the roads at the start of the project. Yeah, prior to. That way there's no arguments going back to what the road looked like before they started.
So it's kind of the same conversation we had about the quarry and the blasting. You know, if your basement cracks after the quarry's been blasting and you don't have, you know,
Prove that it wasn't. correct.
time stamped images, non-photoshopped proof that it wasn't that way before, it's a tough argument to make. So it would be a similar situation. But
Would
Yeah.
this be as easy as just adding or better at the end of that? Or what? Or better? Like on the agreement, instead of, just being back to the way it was or better.
So would that fall back on, oh, this is how it was,
Yeah.
you know, that?
I will suggest that on all of our rehab work, like when we go to cities and tear out curb and pour it back in the same spot, we have to do pre-construction photos of everything, and they actually do them as videos now. But you could require a pre-construction video and photos of the site and all egress and egress routes. So it's pretty simple. We have to do it on all of those.
That would solve the problem without changing any of the verbiage.
Yeah. I think that would be good, except I'm thinking 10 years in, Darren's retired and is living in Oahu. The MP4 file is on some laptop somewhere. And, now we're trying to figure out what was the,
I think this is probably more just the construction phase.
okay. Was that the section?
Yeah, I don't think it's after it's built, you're gonna have a lot of heavy equipment.
Because that's just, yeah, during the
Okay,
construction.
I'm sorry. I was thinking
Concrete trucks.
in general maintenance. So yeah, I would totally agree with construction. That would be more straightforward.
Yeah, it could just be some we already have the language in there that I provided about the resident project representative, that him and the representative from the developer document the current road conditions and sign off on it.
I thought there was a specific road that might have been working
Oh,
on.
that was added.
Is
We
it,
did that on that sometime.
where was it added? What you said about the project?
The resident project representative
Pictures.
it's in Darren's red line. Hold on, I'm on Mark's red line right now. I gotta bounce back.
So in section 14-601 C. Nope, sorry, D, Delta,
14407C.
D. It's traffic. Would
Okay.
that be a place to add a pre-construction documentation of road conditions
Sure.
is required?
What was that again?
Yeah,
Post.
pre and a post. At least a pre, so you can have something that you can argue against later, right?
Exactly.
The post, you can always go get it, sign that it's needed.
8 should be another good spot because it's measures to address the mitigation. It references dust smoke, but it also states construction-related impacts.
Yep. Another good one.
And then to your point of where to store that,
I would-
YouTube?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
I was kind of being facetious, but it's like, sometimes it sounds good on paper. And it's like, the reality is, I don't know.
It's on a CD.
Will
What's the PD?
the conditional use permit will have to be filed and posted somewhere, be a matter of public record.
Oh, yeah.
Attached with that.
Yeah, there'll be all kinds of
Aaron's
files,
got a
Having a plan for it.
files and drawings and everything.
new program for that, right? You can just save it in your program?
I can save it now.
Yes.
It's all on the server.
Okay, very good. So we got,
If it gets lost after that, that's IT's fault.
Yeah.
Darren will be long gone. He'll be in Hawaii. So.
that's right. I'm lobbying for you, Darren, now that you're. Anything else in regard to a specific section or addition from either you or you? I don't want to rush, but I don't want to linger. We don't need to. I'm fine. I would leave it to consensus. If well, let me just ask. I would like this to be our last meeting. If we're in agreement with what's been discussed tonight and that there will be an end result made available to you between now and our meeting in April that would reflect this discussion and all the prior discussions. So if my thinking is, if we can stop physically meeting tonight, if something comes to mind or forgot or, oh yeah, we can still email that and absorb that into the document if that's okay, because this is kind of your meeting as far as priorities are concerned. Is that agreeable that we not meet again physically? If there are anything that hasn't been submitted up to this point, that we can do that via email to Darren, and in the aggregate document, we will take it on. Unless if it's just a total, oh, we need to figure this out and it's going to take a meeting. I have absolutely no authority. I'm just the traffic cop. But, we can meet if something came up and it was like, we need to figure this out and it's going to take a long discussion. I'm not at all saying we can't meet, but I would like to, as far as following up with the Board of County Commissioners, let them know that we have concluded our meetings. There will be a subsequent document that will be available to all participants, and barring objections to any of the contents of that document, we will consider this committee to have concluded its work in a couple weeks, giving you a buffer to think of something else. Is that agreeable?
More than fair.
The
Any,
these will all be added to Darren's, right? Which
yes. I mean, Jeff emailed stuff even today, I believe.
Yeah, I've got some information about some existing pilot agreements, so
Yeah.
I'll send it there.
So we have-
As you discuss.
So we will, take that into Darren's document, and for the sake of our discussion, we have this work in progress of this spreadsheet, which is just rearrange the furniture on the document. So we will have two tools come second Tuesday of April for us to drive this thing home.
I think you're spot on, Paul. I think you're right on where we need to be, and carry on.
Okay.
Mark, I see you agree to that?
Yep,
I'm at the bottom of the page.
I've been very agreeable tonight.
Just checking. Mark.
No. Darren, can we ask you like what the timeline is for different, can I ask you that, or do you know, I mean, exactly what it would be? Let's just say it was approved on April 9th or go on.
So a timeline would be, depending on what happens on April 9th, if there is a decision made, a vote taken. We could have a public hearing the week of April 29th. Well, it would be the first, it would be the week of April 6th, because at that meeting,
May,
to be able to post it, I would be
You
able
mean
to.
You mean May?
May 6th?
Yeah, May,
Sorry.
the week of May 6th, because if there was a decision made on April 9th, I couldn't post it until April 17th.
And one wild card to keep in mind is last time we did this, we had a lawyer on retainer, Mr. Cobb. And so we were able to balance these changes back and forth and have a languaged legal document at our disposal. I don't know with our current situation what kind of lag there's going to be in that regard.
You still have one on retainer, just a different one.
Okay, so after.
Yes, but not one who that's all he does.
So saying everything's perfect, attorney and everything, would be the week of April 6th,
May 6th.
or May 6th. Planning and zoning would have to take other considerations into effect from public hearing. which we would have a meeting on May 14th. We could do it then. And I can take it directly to the commissioners without a waiting period. So I can take it to them May 20th. That's if they accept it, because they don't have to accept it. They can send it back, they can make changes themselves, they can deny it, or they can vote for it.
But the first time they'd see it would be May 20th.
In a perfect
In a
set.
perfect set, okay. It's after the public hearing, after we've come to a conclusion, then after the public hearing, and we reconsider the public hearing, then it goes to the commissioners. Perfect world, that's gonna be May 20th.
Yeah, but
Then they could send it back if they wanted to.
right. But in that time, we'd have to have somebody to make changes, to write the changes if we made them, so it's a legal document. I don't have that education.
Okay, so there are some variables in the plan, but,
I'm guessing probably June.
all right,
That's my thoughts.
well, but it's June of 2024, not a different June, so we're making progress. Any other questions, comments? I know I did a lot of talking. This is all y'all's deal. Please.
I think Darren's laid out a good plan, and I think it's optimistic, but he said it's, and we may be pushing this in June, but as a plan, I think it's a good one. Go for it.
All right. Well,
So, question.
no, yeah.
So on 4/9, on April 9th, that would be whether the new regulations were approved, or if there was another motion that said that. that-
4 or 9 is the
Just
earliest we can do
Right, right.
any business.
But I mean, does that mean, okay, so what if it's not to approve the motion, the regulation, a motion that's made? And then there has to be findings that show what that,
Yes.
why that happened.
There, I mean, we will have to work through, we'll have to make a decision. That decision will include everything it always has to include, which
Okay.
is findings.
Okay.
So regardless of what that decision is,
Right.
it's not, as you know better than I do, it's not just because that's what we think that day. Us and Overland Park and various and other legal documents have to have a conversation. So. Any other questions about the process?
Does anyone think we should have a workshop the first week of April, or did we already discuss people are busy? Just to kind of figure out,
For planning and zoning the process?
yes, figure out our thoughts before April 9th instead of just going in kind of blind. Or not blind, but not prepared.
I guess it depends on how long we want to spend on April 9th. It
Yeah.
could be a long night if we have a workshop first.
I'd suggest we start chipping away at it April 9th when we can make some decisions. If we have a workshop, we can't make any decisions.
But if we, I mean,
It's,
even if we take a section and a change, we can vote on that change. And then that change is done. So,
if we're doing it on April 9th.
yes.
If we do anything that's outside of that, outside of the special meeting after April 9th, we can't make any decisions.
So if we don't get through all of it on April 9th, you could have a special meeting, which I have to have 10 days notification of. So you're looking at a special meeting on the 19th.
Okay. Does that make sense? Because what do y'all think? Would you want, there's one workshop?
I would be able to do it anyway.
Okay.
I don't want a workshop. I think we need to get this where we can make decisions. And I would rather have a long meeting than two separate meetings on this, due to all the stuff we have to do to post and everything.
Or if we have to, we could go to another special meeting if it runs.
We have to,
I agree with
I think-
Rich, just deal with it on the.
All right. There's nothing else? Going once, going twice. 7:42. It's still light out. Thank you for your patience. I'm calling this adjourned. I really appreciate all of you. I appreciate all the time and effort you've been putting into this. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's a huge decision. Undersell that at all.